Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Illumi-Nation. We are so happy that you guys are tuning in. We're so grateful. Thank you. Look, we had a very talented psychic medium tarot reader on who was doing a demonstration of what a tarot read looks like with our guest today, Julie Brown. That was part one. And she talked about other divination tools that healers use. This week, this is part two. And Valerie is going to take a deeper dive into showing you what shadow work looks like, just a little tiny glimpse into what work with Valerie looks like. So again, Jen identified some blocks that were going on with Julie, and now Valerie is going to tap into the frequency of those blocks. And I'll let Valerie actually speak more to what she is about to demonstrate. So go for it.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here, Julie. I really appreciate you because shadow work can be a really vulnerable space. And so I thought a great way to do this was to start with the tarot reading. Like, here's a general problem that I'm facing, and what do the cards have to say? And now we're going to find the root cause of that. Like, why are you experiencing this block? Why are you experiencing this pattern? So it was really nice to meet you the other day, and I look forward to talking to you more today. So I do my work a little bit different. I know that Jen is just like, don't tell me anything. I'm just going to start pulling my cards. But with shadow work, it's a lot of processing. So we're talking, we are communicating, and then the channel messages are just kind of flowing out. And that's how I do my work. And so the other day, as you guys were doing the tarot reading, there were some shadows that came through that I was able to identify the frequency of. And so I look forward to kind of sharing that with you. But I want to kind of remind everybody what you're facing. So if you want to share that a little bit before we get started, that would be great.
So I think I'm a creative person at heart, and I'm kind of lacking motivation, inspiration, passion. And I have heard a lot that I am a healer, and I'm not really connecting with that. I have before in the past. So like, for example, I'll do a quick meditation to get into someone's Akashic record, and then I'm just completely distracted. So I just feel like and then I get frustrated. So anyway, yeah, I just feel like there's some, I don't know what it is.
Yeah. Okay.
Val, before you get started, can I
Yeah.
just interject here for a
Of
moment?
course.
Something else I feel like is important about your story, Julie, as a healer in the Akashic records, and I think I might have mentioned this with Jen, that as healers, as we know, there are so many teachers out there, and we hear all of these different things that we need to do to tap in. And I know that sometimes that can really bog us down. Like, do we have to meditate for an hour?
Yeah.
These types of different things. And again, it's understanding the way energy works. And then I work with the teacher, I work with Valerie with my gifts, and so that you can tap into what it is that works for you and your own special gift. So I wanted to say that,
I
Jules,
love that you're
know
sharing that because, a lot of people, even, there's no real accreditation in the realm of spirituality. And so anyone can put together a school, a program, a coaching, whatever, and create like a whole world around it based on their experience. And again, with the unseen, everything is a perception. And so we might lock in on what is right, but it might be what's right for me and not what's right for Julie, or what's right for me and not what's right with you, Susan. And I think that that is like the most amazing place to start, in knowing that we are all vibrationally different. There's no right or wrong way to meditate. Some people walk, some people lay down, some people sit in that with their mudras and all of that stuff. And it really is what resonates with your vibration at any given time. You might be somebody that needs to be grounded or be outside, because a lot of times you're like up and all over the place. And honestly, like, the deeper you know yourself in this journey, the more expansion you will have within your own gifts. And I think that is where it all starts. Some people are born with like explosive gifts and it's just like all in place, but it's still being seen through the perception of their experience. And so when we dive into our own personal work or our shadows and we raise our frequency and figure out these blocks within us, those things naturally happen. I know it did for me. I think, Susan, you shared a similar experience that once you start clearing out some of that lower frequency, everything just kind of flows in.
And I'll add one more thing to that.
Yeah.
I mean, and I also think, for me, I just thought that I was just intuitive until I went to see a medium who explained to me about this extrasensory gift that I have. And so I would censor myself when I was working with clients because I was like, where did that thought come from? And I think one of the biggest pieces to learn is trusting in yourself. And I've heard that from, and I know, Jules, that you've dealt with that too. It's how do you trust what's coming in, because sometimes it's like, where did that come from? You just think everybody has these experiences.
Right. And that's like actually the perfect segue because, one of the ancestral traits or the ancestral lines that she carries is doubt. And like, I always say this, we're born and our physical traits come from our ancestors and our silly laugh or just being really good at construction or sewing or whatever the case may be. But so do these traits as well. And so when we dive in to our ancestral lines, it can be really supportive. Like you might carry an ancestral line and it can surface and expand in a way that isn't so familiar, or like, oh, that makes sense. I wasn't even thinking about it along those lines. But the awareness around it is the first step to having a different experience. And so what I noticed for you in the realm of your gifts and like stepping into it full force, because you are a healer, and we are all gifted. We all do have these abilities, and there's not one person that can't put the time and the effort into it and get to exactly where we are in this. And you are a very gifted healer too. So I just wanted to kind of start off by saying that about you. But what I did notice, there was an ancestral trait of doubt. There was also like this need for perfection. It's like an insatiable need I need to know all of this before I can confidently step into it. But the thing about perfection in general is that you're chasing something that does not exist. Perfection does not exist. If we had that frequency, there would be no purpose of us being here. And so it's going to be like you finish this and you're like, well, maybe I could use a little bit more on this end. Let me try this. And you're doing, like you're saying, class after class after class, and you still feel like you don't quite get it, but you do. So these traits often kind of bounce off of each other, where the doubt is here and then you're doing more. And then you're like, but there's probably more I don't know, or there's probably something that I'm missing. Let me do some more. And then there's also this vibration of detachment, right? Where it feels more of like a detachment of self than others, because when I read your energy, it actually feels like you have a very nurturing energy going out, but like with self to self, there's something kind of a little bit of a block there. So tell me what your thoughts are with me just kind of like generally sharing a couple of the vibrations that I saw from the problem that you brought to the table for us today.
Well, I think the word perfectionism is very interesting. And I think that's an accurate description, although I wouldn't have been able to identify that myself.
Yeah.
I don't think I saw that. I know we have OCD in my family. That is a maybe that's the earth word for perfectionism.
Right.
And there is actually a gene that carries OCD. And I have that gene.
Insatiable, like that need, focus. It's like, never ending.
Yeah. So I think that's very interesting. Although I don't have OCD, I mean, there's a lot of traits with that, but that perfectionism, that's very, very interesting. And I think there is I got to do this first, and then I have to do this, and then I have to, before I can dig in, I have to be really sure, instead of just following your intuition and doing it.
there's a lot of preparation, right? With that frequency, where you're constantly preparing for something and you're trying to get to this end result, but it's like, you know, the end result doesn't actually come. I guess that's like the best way to say it. There's always going to be that next thing that you add on. So it's a task. And then once you're reaching it, it still doesn't feel complete, right? So then you have to create another task and another task. And it's like, it does feel like a never ending cycle and pattern that can really hold you back in the realm of you stepping into it. And I think with everything, once you get to that clarity and realization that we didn't come out the womb walking and talking, okay? And nothing can prepare you to start doing any of that outside of actually just stepping into it. But there's this block within you and your energy telling you, no, can't do that just yet, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And
It's
so very interesting.
Yeah. And so I think when we talk about shadow work, just understanding, number one, when we connect to our higher selves, like that's not who you are. You know, your higher self is very confident. Your higher self is very open and nurturing, and all of these beautiful qualities your energy carries. And actually you have a very strong presence, although when these vibrations are bouncing off of each other, you have doubt and then the detachment. And that detachment is really around self-acceptance, right? Like where I see that I can do this, but then that fear is going to block you from really having that experience. Like I know I'm good enough to do this. But instead the energy tells you to block it off. If I don't have this experience at all, then I'm not going to experience not being able to do it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And so really in the realm of all of this, when we talk about shadow work, before we ever do a clearing, the awareness around it is the most important thing, where you're like, oh, okay, my energy is telling me to do this. And on top of that, this is not my natural born given energy. You know what what you are authentically, your higher self is. And we're trying to take these frequencies and vibrations and kind of clear them out of your energy so you can step into your self-love and your authenticity. And so just being aware that when you go to dive into the work, of course, your energy is going to tell you, no, I need to do another class. And I'm not reading this right, but you certainly are. You are a very intuitive person and you're very connected. And what comes naturally for you actually has been a natural gift that you've carried most of your life, where you and most intuitive people, it's just second nature to them. So they don't understand, like Susan was saying, your intuitive clear cognizance, or the sense of knowing or just reading energy in an empathic way, just feels like something everybody else is doing in life. But actually not everybody has that experience. So once you realize this is my gift, you're not going to question it as much, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can I add something here?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Susan, go ahead.
This is what happens when you can read each other. The analogy that I'm coming up with, I think we all, almost every single person has heard of the imposter syndrome, right? That came out a long time ago, where we get education and then we need to go out into the world and apply it, right? So we go through these, you train, you apply, you learn, you train, you apply, right? It's sort of like what we all have to do. It doesn't matter, when you go to school, and we never feel like we know quite enough, right? And then you get into a field for a long time. I've been in a therapist for 30 years, and I still question myself sometimes. But I think, like, a musician, for example, this is the analogy that came up, that when you're a musician, that you just keep getting better and better and better and better, but it's very tangible. You learn how to play music, right? And so you've got that evidence right in front of you. And I think this kind of work, to learn to trust yourself, talking about perfectionism, because it feels very sacred. Like, I am going to pass on messages to people. What if I'm wrong? That's always where I go to, right? Because first, do no harm in any kind of healing work.
Right.
And that trust comes with practice and application. What I always say to my clients, does this resonate with you? Because if it doesn't, I want you to tell me. I do not know you better than you know you. Just like Valerie keeps asking you, you know, is this resonating with you? Does this feel accurate? And you came back and said, well, I wouldn't thought of perfectionism in that way, but yet, dot, dot, dot. So this idea of we always are growing, we are always learning, but we've got to have the courage to practice and apply it. So I
Yeah.
just wanted to say that that was coming through.
I think in the realm of reading, well, I guess it's different for different practitioners because, I mean, I say stuff to people that doesn't resonate all the time because I'm a shadow worker, right? So there are things people do not want to see about themselves. And I can very clearly recognize a frequency, but like that comes with time where I'm like, okay, you know, and with you, this is the perfect example. My wording in the frequency that I feel is just a way for someone to relate, to kind of like understand the frequency that I'm feeling. I see things in frequency and energy. And so it's like these are relatable words. But for you, it was like, oh, it doesn't fully resonate, but actually that does, you know, and really trying to like ask the questions and get to the clarity, because the pattern behavior is the like what it creates, is the block, like the energy of it being insatiable and having to do more and more and more to prepare yourself until you feel like you're perfectly ready and prepared to do this
Which
job.
never happens. So
Right.
you're in a
And-
place of dissatisfaction.
Exactly.
Right. And that's that insatiable place. You're never going to reach it because
Right.
there's no such thing as perfection. And
Right.
so, and then the other thing I wanted to touch on in as far as doubt goes, because it's a brutal energy, especially when you're stepping into your gifts. It's the most disempowering, oppressive energy. I literally, like when people get to the other side of it, I think I get more excited than they do. And but I have to say about that, there is no right and wrong. Okay. The people that were aligned to work with me when I first started this are completely different than the people work with me today. I work with a lot of practitioners at this point. I would say 90% of my clients are actual practitioners in practice, and 10% are really looking for like trauma behavioral pattern release, which they end up stepping into their gifts anyways too, right? So it's inevitable in the realm of all of this, but there's no right or wrong. So those people that were aligned to me, even if I did see something through a perception that was inaccurate or through my own trauma at that time, that was their alignment and that was my alignment. And I'm a teacher and I'm a student all in the same moment. And there was something in it for me, right? So no moment in this comes without that. And I think just humbling yourself and being like, listen, through these times that we're going to have together, you know, if I'm triggered, that's a wound I need to deal with. I need to hop off the line and do some work before we finish our session. Or if I'm saying something that is so completely far left that you can't receive it, and I'm seeing it through a broken lens, again, that's another moment where I need to sit in reflection and humble myself. This is not, you know, this work isn't coming from ego or power. We are human, and really stepping into that and being able to recognize, again, this could be a lesson for me, right? And so even if you dive into this in a way where you could be wrong, is it wrong or is it growth? You know, and that's really what I like people to sit with in all of this. And is it hurting your ego? And that's why, you know, do you not want to be wrong because there's something in there that might make you feel like you're not good enough in some way, but you are. You're amazing.
So what's happening right now in my brain is all of these shadows I'm recognizing from a younger place,
Yes.
but I can't quite get there, or maybe I don't want to go there.
Right.
But I feel this is so familiar.
Yeah. So
Like I knew this already.
yeah.
We've been here before.
Let's talk a little bit about
Each one, the doubt, not the detachment so much, but the doubt and the perfectionism.
yeah.
The detachment is interesting, and that is probably not at the core of all of these things, but it's a part of it.
I think that like within the family unit, like if there was traits like this that were really on the table with expectation,
Mhm.
um, it automatically will trigger an energy in you where you're meeting an expectation. And I'm not sure how that surfaced for you in your younger years.
Mhm. Well, I mean, my mother was a perfectionist.
Mhm.
Um,
And so
and
let's talk.
yeah,
Go ahead.
maybe a little OCD.
Mhm.
There's so many traits with that, though. It's hard. You can't just throw it out there. But I'm comfortable with saying she was a perfectionist. Everything had to be just so.
And if
Um,
it wasn't, maybe you weren't like good enough in some way, right?
well, we got a lot of if I want something done right, I have to do it myself.
Mhm. Which
Um,
is instilling that idea that what you do isn't enough and
And
doubt,
also, and,
doubt in
and,
your experience.
right.
and also your mother, um, she had high expectations and some rigidity around religion, right? And those of us that have grown up in religion, right, Julie? Your mother had some, yeah, right? And so because I grew up Catholic and I know that I still have things, shadows from that dogma and those deep belief systems. But something I'm feeling guided to bring up during this call, because this particular story has stuck with me and I want Val to hear it. So Julie was young, 17, when her brother Keith was diagnosed and died from cancer. And that diagnosis, or that he was going to die, was withheld from Julie. And during very formidable years, right? You chose not to go to college at that point. You were really reeling from your own grief. And but there was a story that you shared with me that was so profound that I've told a million times, actually. And this goes to perception and perspective. And there was your brother Keith had thrown a baseball through the screen door in your home. And
Mhm.
so there was this giant hole. And after Keith died, Julie's mother said, "We need to fix that hole. It reminds me of Keith." And her father said, "I don't want to fix the hole. It reminds me of Keith." And it
Mhm.
always brings up tears to me because it is so profound,
Oh,
the
wow.
way that you can, different perceptions,
Right.
incredible. But I feel like that really sort of drives home this point of that
Oh, yeah.
perfectionism in your
Yeah.
mother. So I needed to say that.
Yeah. No, thanks for sharing that. I think
We
like,
ended up selling that house, and I was very upset about it. That was we just graduated my senior year of high school, and I
mm,
was very upset because that's where all my memories were
oh,
of him, of my family, of the whatever. So it was kind of traumatic for me
I
to
bet.
have to move out of that house. But that's why my mother wanted to move, to get away
Yeah.
from all that. And
Yeah.
the story ends okay. So, but
Yeah.
we're here to try and acknowledge these moments. So,
Well, I think in that energy, the solution is there. So that can trigger a perception, like her need for perfection. This is end. There is nothing else there. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, he's passed on. And then it's facing like it just feels so solidified, it's that
Final is the word that came
it's
to my
just
mind.
final. And that can be really triggering for somebody that is naturally moving forward in an insatiable way. Like just go, 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 go.
Right.
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 And I can see how that could feel traumatic when somebody's in that other energy.
right.
Um, so I think with you in this experience from childhood, it can lead to those feelings of not good enough, and like you're not going to jump in and try these things. You have the doubt there that's been instilled into you. Your need for more knowledge to feel prepared in what you're doing, and then that detachment of self. Honestly, it's like. It's a preservation thing, really. I'm not going to have some of these experiences if I fully connect to myself and I'm doing this wrong and I'm like honoring this moment and and this isn't right, and you experience failure in some way, It's your own block that you're creating to avoid, the possible mistake. And so people do block, whether it's a connection of themselves or their gifts in some way, to avoid this deeper doubt and perfection that is kind of leading it.
Mm.
Uh,
I mean, that self-acceptance, that's, I just think that's very accurate, and it all, fits in together with.
It does,
Oh, I'm sorry, Susan, I didn't mean to.
No, I'm so thank you
your
for
emotions. So I'm glad that you shared that.
because I was going to say a couple of things. I want to talk about Matthew Perry because that just came through because it feels really poignant. But before I go there, I wanted to say that when we allow the gift to come through, the channel to come through our higher self, we lose ourself. We call it being in flow. And that's what happened with your writing, right? You were not a perfectionist. You allowed yourself, you weren't a writer, right? You didn't go to school for writing, but you allowed yourself to this gift that just poured out of you in these amazing trilogy that you did around grief. That the trilogy is just so beautiful. It's in the show notes. I wanted to bring something up because this is for all listeners. I'm feeling like I need to say this for people when we doubt our gift because our ego gets involved, and that's our perfectionism. That's what tells us we're not ready or we're not good enough. The imposter stuff I was talking about. So many of you probably know who Matthew Perry is, Chandler in Friends, and he died, of course. He had severe drug addiction. But I remember I read his book, and one of the things he talked about is he wanted to be remembered not for his work on Friends, but for his work of helping people to get sober. And that's so often the case where he had this gift to make people laugh. Friends was magical and high vibrational because of the magic that these people had together on set. They made people laugh. Lonely people talk about it, right? They felt like they were friends with these people. And this Friends has lasted and lasted and lasted because of the way it makes people feel. And Matthew's gift naturally was humor, but he couldn't see it. He couldn't see his natural gift and what he did for people. And that I want to say to all listeners, if you're wondering what your natural gift is, I want you to think about what comes as easy to you as breathing. What lights you up? Because often what we're so good at and what comes so naturally, we don't even think about it as a gift because it is so inherently a part of who we are. That is our light that just emanates from us. So I just felt like I had to say that.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a good point for sure. Like within my gifts, it's a unique one, right? I see people's shadows. Like I feel energy so deeply that I can see what you're hiding from yourself, and I kind of stay away from the more surface level energy reading because I feel a depth. And so someone could look at that, or like my human design, like all my energy centers are open from here down. And like it almost feels like, in part one, when Jen shared that I cleared that ghost out of her house, that ghost was in an upstairs bedroom. It felt like it was standing next to me, the level of like energetic sensitivity. So you can look at that and say, this is a curse. This is overstimulating, or you can dive in and really figure out how you can use this to help the world, and it's really beautiful when you can take that time to deeply know yourself. And, once I started doing that and diving into my deepest gift, it did bring passion and joy to me. Although before I'm like, oh, I can feel everything. This is horrible. I'm overstimulated. I want to clear a room because I'm like, this is too much energy. Oh my God. It doesn't need to be like painful. It can be really beautiful.
And also honoring, yourself as an empath. I think that, there's a lot of empathic people and they don't even understand why they're exhausted.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just being aware of what you know, what you need, and how you have to have that downtime and clear that energy. But Val, I want to move into something. We're at the half-hour mark, and I feel like you've talked with Julie about shadow work, really helping. Julie, you got emotional, so she definitely touched something pretty deep inside of you. For people who are wondering, okay, I've got these shadows, now what? If they're not working with a practitioner, what are some practical things that you can help people do around some of this stuff that prevents them from, you know, doing something that they've been dreaming about doing?
Yeah, I think that that's actually what I was just going to dive into, because I'm not going to create this. Here, let me give you the problem without a solution, right? So mean. Well, I mean, luckily you're also working with Susan, so you'll be fine, right? You have a little bit of focus now, right? So in the midst of all of this, when you find yourself in the thoughts, you know, the opposing affirmations can be really supportive. So if you're sitting there doubting what it is that you're experiencing, having the other side of you say, I am gifted, you know, I am feeling this, I am experiencing this, and really tap into what you're feeling. Um, Release that detachment around it and say, I am going to allow myself to gracefully be in this moment and accept it, you know, and own it for what it is. Challenging the energy in a lot of way for you around this specifically would be to step into a place of action, you know, where I'm not going to do another class. And in fact, I might not be charging for the services, but I am going to find, you know, 10 people that are interested in having a reading like this. And the exchange is their honest feedback and me sharing the service. And and as you do that, well, I already know what's going to happen. You're going to get a lot of positive feedback because I can already feel how gifted you are. And in the midst of all of that, as you have the opposing experience from challenging the energy and stepping into it, it's slowly going to allow that energy to kind of shift out, right? Obviously, energy healing can help, where you can clear out some deeper stuff, but just taking action clears that out. Crying through this moment, like sitting in gratitude in that moment, like, wow, that was so beautiful, and really honoring yourself, that's going to shift energy. So there's so many different ways to shift energy and challenge the energy. That's the most important thing, challenging it.
Oh, okay. Okay. I like that.
And if you need help gathering people, like Susan and I could get 10 people, no problem for you. We have a whole spiritual community up in here with all of this. So, you know, we can put a little meetup together for you. But yeah, I think it would be really shifting for your energy.
I wanted to go back to something that Susan mentioned. It's interesting to me that I was able to write these books with these shadows. And while I was writing, I definitely came up against some stuff. Who do I think I am? I'm not an English major, blah, blah, blah. But it was like the channel was open and I couldn't close it. And it was so much fun to write this. And I couldn't stop thinking about these characters and the storyline. And it just 5 years.
Wow.
5 years.
3 books.
Pretty much excited.
When you are connected to that sacral energy, that create that joy, that authentic, and it's creating this emotional state in you, you're opening yourself up and your subconscious is just taking over. You're able to dive into your authenticity. There may have been moments in that where the logical mind stepped in and it kind of tripped you up here and there. Right, like you were saying. But then when you get back into this place where, you know, the subconscious comes back in and you're just flowing, it's just a free flow. it goes to show you where you can be with all of this. Because in life, when you are sitting in your authentic self and you're sitting in honoring your needs and addressing your emotions, addressing all of these things that you need to do to find your self-love and stepping into that, that joy is an all the time experience, right? Where you're just like, I am living my best life. I am doing everything that I'm passionate about. And it is magnetizing to the world. And people are just drawn to me because of this. And it can be a really beautiful place to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that you actually had that experience too. So you could
Yeah.
see that side of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I will say this, listeners, listen up, all of you out there. This applies to any single thing, anything that you are drawn to and passionate about. Our ego is always going to get in the way because our ego is part of us as human beings. And you know, when you're in flow, when you lose time, right, Julie, you couldn't not write the books. And you know, every writer deals with the same thing. Every artist, it's the same thing. When we get in our head, we pick ourselves apart. We pick our work apart, you know, and but you can't not do it, right? Because you could not have not written those books. They were coming through you fast and furious. And you know, people laugh at me because I love to watch the golden buzzer moments of America's Got Talent. And I like to watch the golden buzzer moments because the vibration is so high. And why is the vibration so high? Because you are literally seeing people, you are seeing their soul shine through when they're up there on stage and they lose themselves. And I always say that when someone is shining their light, when they are in their true authentic self and they are channeling that light, you can't feel jealousy.
Well, and then
You
look at
feel
the crowd,
awe.
right?
Right.
And look at the crowd that is
Exactly.
magnetized, and that
Yes.
collective energy amplifies where they are even more. And like, then your tears just start as
Yes.
you're
And
walking.
you
can
feel
feel all
lifted.
of the energy. Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And when somebody is shining that authentic light, you feel lifted by it. When you are really in your heart and you're paying attention, I can be in a restaurant and I can have a wait staff and I can feel that energy and their joy in what they're doing, you know, and I will say to them, you have really impacted my night. You have lifted me through the joy that you are bringing to your interactions with people and in your work. And if when you start to really get in touch with your heart and feel your way through your life, you know when people are shining that light because it literally lifts you. You feel good around that person. So anyway, I just wanted to say that because I can feel listeners out there who are right on the cusp. They want to take that next big, bold move, and they are paralyzed by their own fear. And what I want to say is if your heart is calling you and you do it and you step into it, that light is what is going to draw people to whatever it is you're doing. Believe in yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Finding the things in life that bring you passion and joy is a great place to start because that frequency is very high vibrational, and it's going to get you into the headspace where you can see having that experience with other aspects of your life. So it can definitely light a fire in you if you enjoy, you know, painting, if you enjoy dancing, if you enjoy, you know, martial arts, whatever the case may be, like do those things and do life, you know, and those little moments will start allowing you to open up in other ways. You have to find the things that bring you joy and slowly bring it into your whole existence.
A couple of things, Julie. I want to talk to you about your passion in a minute, but you know, oftentimes, and I certainly with the work I've done, people will say, "I don't even know what my passion is." So, a couple of things for listeners to think about, indicators of what lights you up. What could you talk about? What if you were sitting with a friend? What can you talk about? Not shut up about. That's one indicator. Two, what would you do for free if you weren't getting paid for it? And three, I heard a channel say this yesterday, and I loved it. I've never heard it put quite this way, but she said, what breaks your heart? and do the opposite of that, something positive. And what breaks my heart is when people just beat themselves up and don't have an understanding of that deep self-love. And that's at the heart of the work I do with people. Even though they come in around grief and loss, it really is about this deeper understanding of what it means to have deep self-love. So Julie, I want to ask you, in this conversation, in the shadow work, one thing that brought you here was that you felt like you'd lost your passion. You'd lost the fire. What comes up for you as you've had these couple of conversations, first with Jen with the tarot and now with Val with the shadow work? Can you share sort of some of the things that you're feeling?
I think it's the shadow work is very, like, I've got a lot coming to me right now. And I'm going back into my childhood, and I feel like today's going to be a very interesting day for me.
Yeah.
As I think about all of this stuff and where it stemmed from, and I mean, it's just happening. I'm not trying to.
Well, part of like the processing part of it, like as we're communicating with one another, they're actually like working on your energy right now. And so I'm tapped into you, I'm feeling what they're doing. And it's like, that's like those processing calls really come with like a lot of that. So I'm sure that happens when you talk with Susan too. It's like all the energy just starts flowing. The divine awareness starts coming in. I wanted to acknowledge what I was feeling for you energetically as you were sharing your experience.
Oh, right. What was your question, Susan?
Okay, I was asking you how you're feeling, because one of the things that brought you here, and we've talked about this as well, is feeling like you are losing your passion.
Right. I feel like I can sense a part of myself, which I'm going to refer to as my higher self, that I know that there's a person inside of me that I'm supposed to be operating as, and I'm not. But I know she's there. Does that make any sense?
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel her. She's just, not dealing with all of this crap.
Yeah.
So I do sense, and I have in the past several weeks, this, peaceful person that's not, getting caught up in all of this and just operating from a place of love. And so I do. This is really bringing this up for me even more, that that's possible.
Yeah.
Valerie always knows what I wanted to say something, but remember too, I think that this can also be the spiritual side of stuff, can be also an egoic trap, right? Because at the end of the day, there's two of us. There's our higher self and our human self, and they communicate and work together in this collaboration. We're human beings, so we always have to feel the negative parts too, because that's how we know the contrast, and that's how we know what our preference is. You are both. We're all both. We're human having the experience, and we've got our higher self that we're in communication with. And that's there is no arrival. We're always expanding, and it's just getting in that deeper communication and that clarity that we can tap into, right? Some people do that through meditation, but as Valerie said, meditation is not for everyone. I have a hard time meditating. I'm all about walking in the woods. That is how I connect. Do you want to add, Val?
Yes, yeah.
I do a lot of, so I'll use hape. It's like an indigenous plant medicine to go into my deep states. It's just something that aligns for me. But like, again, like just sitting there in complete silence is not necessarily my thing. So I do meditate in a lot of different ways too, not just hape, but like, there's just so many different ways to do it, and none of it's wrong. But yeah, I totally agree.
There's some amazing breath work out there now.
I'm a breathwork facilitator.
Yes.
Well,
I went to her workshop. Yes, she's an amazing
breath work is where it's at.
it's amazing.
That is my passion outside of being a shadow work or rescue medium. I love clearing haunted houses. I love doing shadow work, but breath work actually, when I'm in that moment with a group of people doing these healings, like I am pumped.
Yeah.
The passion's there. Yeah, it is a very shifting type of energy healing for sure.
When I finish the breath work, I'm immediately in a meditative state.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if anyone struggles with getting into that, just what I would refer to as just a peace, calm, place, the breath work, I think, is the way to go. Yeah.
The reason being is you're doing a breathing pattern that is not natural. And so your conscious mind is focusing on keeping this breath and then keeping this pattern. You're only breathing through your mouth. It's circular breath. You're not stopping. And then you're going on like that for a period of time that when you stop, your brain stops too. You allow your subconscious to just go.
Right.
And I have noticed in being a teacher of breath work that everybody has an experience when they go into that. And that's really beautiful because some people do carry a lot of blocks within their subconscious and stepping into a meditative state. So that's one of those things that most everyone can get there.
Right. Matthew Perry promoted breath work.
I know.
Okay. I wasn't sure if you knew that. Yes.
No, Matthew Perry has the reason that story has taken me, I think that has really captured me is because of what I was talking about earlier of how blind he was to how healing his humor was in the world. Yeah. And he couldn't see it, right? I mean, he had so much self-doubt. I talk about this often, that we often think that people that have addiction issues, that an addiction is the problem, but it's very often the solution to a human being's pain. Of course, it is causing more harm to them, but that is what addiction is about. It is to
have a void inside.
Absolutely.
A need that's not being filled, that's unaddressed. You're going to have to fill it with something.
Well, which is why the shadow work is so important.
It is.
Exactly.
It really dives into figuring out what these needs are, what these voids are, what these traumas are, how to address the emotions, how to step into vulnerability. At the end of the day, I say it all the time. Communication does lead to our emotional freedom. There should be nothing scary about communicating the things that we're experiencing so we don't carry trauma around it. And just that ability to trust yourself, to show up for yourself without really having the expectation of people showing up for you. I'm going to meet my needs. I'm going to fill my voids. I'm going to be whole. I'm going to dive into what I need and allow people to show up for me and express how I'm feeling when something's happening, so I can fully just be a full whole human. And I'm creating that for myself.
And Julie, just to kind of bring this back to the work that we've been doing around triggers, that's shadow work. When you have a trigger, right? That is alerting you to something that we are holding. It has nothing to do with the person who's triggering you.
Yeah,
right?
Right. When we don't step into communication, we create all sorts of storylines in our head. We are gonna have cognitive dissonance with our shadows. We'll create a whole story of why somebody's doing something. We'll project our emotions onto everybody else. Like, you made me feel this way, la, 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 la. When it's really like, I am feeling this way. Why am I feeling this way? What do I need right now?
Exactly.
Does this remind me of something else? Like, where is this coming from? How can I nurture me? And really asking yourself the hard questions. That's a deep connection with self. You can have that connection and you provide for you and then release the energy around it. It can be a really empowering situation.
So really, you're kind of, as you're saying, why do I feel this way? Right? You're kind of like maybe giving it a label or saying, well, I feel this way. And that is the energy that releases it because you've acknowledged it. Is that
Some
kind of how that works?
Yeah, in some ways, there's a lot of different energy that affects our behaviors and patterns. Imprint energy can really be released through talking a lot. There's some ancestral trauma. I've found really is something that is released through energy healing. I don't know about you, Susan, really like that kind of trauma type of energy and past life stuff typically I see happening through like energy work. I think a lot of processing, like you'll see a lot of imprints, like this life experience can kind of like come up out of the filing cabinet and kind of clear out um, through those moments. Susan?
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I'm going to wind us down. And I guess first of all, anybody who's listening out there, I know that we've covered a lot today, and you know that these videos go out on Mondays, and then we have live on Fridays, so people can come in and ask more questions about what we've discussed. But I would like to thank both of you so very much. This was really beautiful, and Julie, I cannot thank you enough for coming on
No.
and letting our practitioners demonstrate just the incredible work that is happening out there in the world.
Yeah, pretty
But I
amazing.
want to,
Thank you.
yeah,
That was,
Thank you. Well, I feel like we should, I know it's a lot of processing, but like once you've done process that, maybe you should be doing an Akashic reading here for us at some point.
yeah, which would be amazing. But Julie, I want to ask you to kind of, I feel like we've got some little loose ends out there, but kind of tie this all together. Tell us how you're feeling now. What are you going to take away from the last, these two different reads that you've had done? Tell me kind of what next steps you're thinking about.
Right. Well, I think it's it's a lot of confirmation. So that's important, especially if you're dealing with doubt and perfectionism and all of that. So I do feel like, yeah, it was a lot of confirmation. I am still reeling from this moment I just had with Valerie. So I apologize. I'm struggling to find my words.
Oh, no.
It's like I'm having a moment.
That's okay. You have your moment.
I'm having a difficult time participating.
No, I actually think that you're participating just fine, and you brought a lot to the table. And you shared a lot of really important things for everybody to see and experience today. And I think it's really beautiful, but also knowing to have some grace, right? So this was a lot that I just pulled up, even energetically, right? So number one, no need to apologize. I just dove into your energy, read your shadows. They started kind of bubbling to the surface. All of these childhood memories start coming in for you. Of course, you're not going to sit here and be like, on your A game. You're in your mind right now processing all of the stuff that's actually being brought to you. So that's actually a very normal experience to have. And I want to honor that for you. So we'll just kind of like leave you with that for today. And if anyone is here watching, that wants to hop on Friday with something and have Susan and I channel some stuff for them, I invite you to do that, because it can be really powerfully shifting, right? Where, you have that awareness and all of a sudden it's like, oh, that click, and that click can be really powerful once you sit with that and process it and figure out how you're going to challenge that for yourself. And so thank you so much for joining and being so vulnerable and allowing us to pull all of this energy to the surface for you today. I am gracious for your time.
Thank you.
Same.
Thank
And
you.
again, you guys, we are Illumi-Nation is still a pretty new show. We are going to have our own YouTube station right now. It's still on Valerie and I. It's still on our different social media sites, and all of that will be in the show notes. We'll also have the link to Julie's Brownstone series, which I highly encourage you guys to pick up the trilogy. It's really the books are absolutely transformative when it comes to dealing with grief and loss. They're just beautiful stories. And Julie, thank you. I love you. I appreciate our listeners.
Thank
Love to all
you.
of you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.